I received an email from a viewer who asked me to make a video that he felt was of the utmost importance to other YouTube content creators. A video that he actually offered to help me make. Now, he warned me that making a video like this might be risky based on the things that he and people like him were facing on YouTube. Now, I agree that making this video actually might be risky because people come to my channel mostly to learn how to create video, put it onto YouTube, and grow an audience around that content. But there are times I like to talk about things here on the channel that I think other creators might be dealing with and might be important or relevant to making content here on the YouTube platform itself. From what I can tell, this viewer has a few different things that he's wrestling with, but they all seem to stem back to what he refers to as Mr. Beast's agenda. For anyone who may not be aware, one of the co-founders of the Mr. Beast channel and one of his longtime friends who's appeared in a lot of his videos, Chris Tyson, recently revealed that he's been undergoing hormone replacement therapy. And he identified himself as someone who was right in the midst of obtaining what he referred to as life-saving, gender-affirming healthcare. Viewers had actually started noticing a physical change in Chris in the videos that he was doing on the Mr. Beast channel and in some of the pictures and tweets that he had put out on social media. His appearance, which had become a little more feminine, and coincides with the gender transformation he had mentioned, seems to have spurred on a much larger conversation about the responsibility of YouTube content creators and the responsibility of YouTube itself. So I reached out to one of my very good friends, who's also a YouTube content creator, to see if we could have a conversation about these transgender issues, how they impact YouTube content creators, YouTube itself, and see if we could get to the bottom of exactly what's going on here. Let me introduce my good friend, Danielle Hallett. How long have we known each other, Danielle?
Oh, God. Do you know what? Quite a while, actually.
I was trying to remember, and I went, okay, so my channel that I have now I started in 2018, and I knew you before then. It's at least 5 years, probably more like 7-ish.
No, I think that's about right. And we've hung out. We've had adventures together. So,
We definitely have hung out at conventions where we both show up, like Vid Summit, and have we been to VidCon together too?
We have. I met the first time I met you was at VidCon. You were on the TubeBuddy stand doing channel reviews.
The last Vid Summit, we were both there, and every morning we would be texting each other, and it was a group of us, and we'd be like, okay, who's doing breakfast this morning? And we would all go down and chill out and hang out at breakfast. We've had adventures in the giant rental vehicles you always seem to rent when we go to these conventions. You always get these massive vehicles so that when anyone's like, should we go somewhere? You're like, I have a school bus.
I got a bus, yeah.
Some of my favorite memories in the creator space of hanging out with other creators have been with you.
Same.
People suggesting topics to talk about, I think is great. I love when people do that. But this was a very specific one to me in the sense that he seemed to feel that there was an issue that needed to be addressed. It was an issue of victimization, that he felt he and people like him are being victimized, and that I needed to speak out against that victimization. Now, he noted this himself. It's like the Filmora video you did back then, but now instead of Filmora f***ing up, it's Mr. Beast's brand. The world must wake up from this madness, or else we are entering a new age where people, in order to get success, they must become sheep and follow all the orders from the individuals who have the power. And the individuals who have all the power right now are trans people who have no idea how science works. Now, just so we know a little bit more about you, Danielle, you are transgender.
I am. I'm transsexual, which is apparently that's not politically correct anymore, but I'm diagnosed with gender dysphoria. I also have Della-Chapelle syndrome, which means I've got some crazy chromosome stuff going on. Won't go into that right now.
I'm not here to attack this guy who sent me this email and this message. I really would like to have a discussion about it.
I agree, actually.
Because I think just beating people up, there's a reason I won't show his name, because I don't think battles solve anything.
You're absolutely right. And while I will chuckle at some of the, in all honesty, it's much better if we can have discussions, conversations about things. The reality is we rarely can. It usually becomes divisive, and a lot of it is politically motivated, unfortunately, which is abhorrent, to say the least. But so.
One of the things that I suppose, and this may not be true, is that the individual who sent me this email
probably doesn't know a lot of transgender people or has probably not hung out with a lot of transgender people. I will say that based on what he wrote, it feels like it began with a simple, I got banned or I got suspended from Reddit and they took down my post and I'm angry. And that was the instigator to why he messaged me. But it felt like he's looking for some revenge for wrongs he felt were done against him.
We haven't read the post, don't know, but certainly that's the impression that I got from listening to that too.
Now, the first thing I wanted to talk to Danielle about was the accusation and assumption that this viewer had mentioned that the transgender community had been forcing kids to cut their dick off and take estrogen, which was increasing their depression.
What seems to be his point of contention seems to be a moving target a bit. One of the points is that he feels little kids, his words, are forced to cut their D out and take estrogen, which increases their depression. Now, you and I have known each other for a while, and you know that I have a son who's an older teenager now, but was younger when we were making content on the same channel, and you and I would do collabs. You know, it's been a while, but can you just get it to a round number how many times you tried to force my son to get his D cut out?
Let's see, there was...
Ballpark.
Never. Ever. A lot of the things that he, his opening gambit, his premise were wholly incorrect, which unfortunately will be seen as adversarial, or people will take an adversarial response, because when you start out with, these facts are happening, I am angry, I demand satisfaction, that sort of approach rarely goes well, because what you'll have then is people on the left or transgender activists will be angry and will fight back, and then it escalates and then people get banned.
Yeah.
I'm right of center politically, and there's a lot of things in the transgender community. That isn't the thing, by the way, but there isn't a transgender clubhouse where we all discuss how we're going to take over the world.
Wait, don't tell me that. Now you've ruined the premise.
I'm sorry to bust that bubble, but it doesn't actually exist. In fact, by far, most of us want to be left alone and just get on with doing the things, which I mean, that's a whole other point, but it's baffling why people get so annoyed that I exist in private doing my own things.
I make no claims of anything other than ignorance when it comes to what a transgendered person has to go through when they're dealing with hormone replacement therapy or any surgeries that might be involved. The viewer had made it sound like anyone could grab their child and force them to have hormone replacement therapy and get them into surgery. But then reading some of the tweets that he was referencing, Chris Tyson made it sound like he had to jump through quite a few hoops to get these treatments. So I wanted to go right to someone I knew who's been through that.
Here's the thing, right? Being transgender kind of sucks. Surgery really sucks. I mean, you need to be committed. I do not know anyone, and I know, because of this trans community, right? But I do know quite a lot of transgender people. None of us recommend surgery. It's something you do if you're like, are you sure? Because that's a door you can never close. And honestly, it's pretty inconvenient, painful, and rubbish. So, I mean, I farted the other day and I peed myself. That was new. That's something that doesn't happen. That's like, what the hell is going on now with my new body? So, it sucks. Nobody recommends this, but there is this belief in the professionally outraged that's what's everyone's going around saying, oh yeah, be trans, it's so hip and cool. It's kind of it's seen as being a bit of a trend, and maybe because there's more awareness now, and people are more comfortable being open about it now. And
what's interesting here for me personally, I'm a child of the 60s, right? I was born in the mid 60s. I'm 56 years old. So I was born in an era where there was a lot more homophobia, and slurs against people who were gay were commonplace in little kid language. I mean, I grew up in a world where people would call people gay or use words that today, thankfully, have started to move out of the common vernacular. Not that they don't exist anymore, but I think there's more awareness of how hurtful that is to people.
I wanted to know from one creator to another creator what her childhood might have been like versus what my childhood was like.
All my life, it's my earliest memory is of being transgender, literally as soon as I was, this is a nursery type thing, and as soon as I was aware that there were girls and boys, I was like, hang on a minute, something's not right here. And I couldn't even rationalize those thoughts. I was too young, but that's how strong that feeling was right from the start of my life. Being transgender robbed me of my childhood. It basically, I lost the first 25, 30 years of my life because I wasn't being who I actually was. I was pretending to be blokey bloke, playing rugby, doing all that sort of stuff. And it just wasn't me. It was constantly screaming inside.
Really?
Which is why if you say you're thinking of the children, you need to consider what hell life is if you've got gender dysphoria and you aren't able to be yourself. It's a waking hell. It's a living hell. It's the first thing you think of when you wake up and the last thing that's on your mind when you go to bed. It's, when you've been in a relationship and you split up and you're consumed by it for a day or two, imagine that permanently. And that's what gender dysphoria is like. It's all you can think about. And humans are remarkably resilient things, and so we learn to deal with it. But you're forcing children to deal with that when you deny gender-affirming care. So this whole, I'm thinking of the kids, that's just bullshit. But it does need to be done properly, and it does need to be done with care and, not recklessness.
Now, my viewer had mentioned that he really felt that this whole thing was Mr. Beast's agenda. So I wanted to do some research and dig around a bit so I could see exactly what he was referring to.
This whole conversation began with this idea that Mr. Beast is somehow pushing this forward. Now, I don't pretend to know Mr. Beast other than in passing. I do not know Chris Tyson. What's been triggering people is his look in the Mr. Beast videos is changing. I'm saying he because I've always known him as a he. It's still Chris. I don't know how Chris identifies currently. It may be she, and I don't mean to be offensive that if that's how Chris identifies, I'll just say Chris. I'm learning to adapt too.
People get really upset over pronouns.
Do you think that that's overblown? Do you think that people get so crazy?
Oh my God. I mean, it depends. Yeah. There's a viral video of somebody who's transgender and saying, "It's man," in a game shop. And it's like, oh, that's really cringe. Generally speaking, there'll be a phase when you've transitioned and you've made the jump and your pronouns have changed. But as you get older, you're like, I don't really care. Call me sir, ma'am, oi, whatever.
Do you think intention has a lot to do with it? Like if someone isn't intentionally trying to demean you, and I mean, I get called, listen, people come up to back of me in the restaurant when I'm having like lunch with Megan,
yeah.
Like the waitress will come up behind the two of us with the hair and go, "What are you ladies having today?" And I'll be like, and then they'll come around the front and see this hot mess and go, oh, excuse me.
It used to upset me more fairly early on in my transition when people misgendered me. And I thought I was doing so well at being myself.
Right.
And obviously I still looked like a hairy guy. And that used to piss me off. But as I've got older, I don't care. And a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
And so that's been so overused as an attack by haters. It's lost all sort of all its venom now, and it's just like so. God bless. Is that the best you got now?
Right.
So I don't care. Nobody cares anymore.
I hear you. It's like when someone for the 9 millionth time says, "Hey there, Tom Araya from Slayer."
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I know.
The number of times I get Mrs. Doubtfire on my. She's Scottish. I mean, really?
You have an accent.
Okay. Why are you so witty?
Now, in another tweet that was sent to me from my viewer, he said it clearly showed that YouTube was supporting this agenda.
Talking about this Chris situation, like he had posted that very simple image in a tweet of just him on the front of what looks to be maybe a sailboat, where he said, "It's never too late to start being yourself." I don't think that he was in any way insinuating that anyone should do what he's doing or he's trying to force his lifestyle on them. I think he was, in general, putting out a positive message that was completely self-reflective to say, being who you really feel like you are. And YouTube made a simple reply to that, just saying, "You're glowing. Like, you look good. You look great." How is that offensive?
It's not, by the way. That doesn't upset anybody. It's just an acknowledgement of a positive message. But that is the people who hate that have been, I feel conditioned to see that as something that's such a frightening development and an endorsement. And the irony in all of that is these are usually the very people that will accuse others of being sheep and brainwashed, And I'm just like, just step back for a moment and, there's nothing. Yeah, you're glowing. That's all there is in that message. And yet somehow triggered, transgender person has nice post, I must hate. Why? Scroll on by.
Now on Twitter, one of the users had tweeted that a video was made by a creator by the name of Sunny V2 and felt that video was a bit invasive for the wrong reasons. He called it off-putting and unnecessary. The video he was referencing was titled, "Why Chris Will Soon Be a Nightmare for Mr. Beast." The reason I'm mentioning this tweet is because Mr. Beast actually replied to it. So I wanted to ask Danielle about this.
There was a tweet that I ran across that was from someone who was pointing out that the creator Sunny V2 had made a video saying, "Why Chris will soon be a nightmare for Mr. Beast." And Mr. Beast replied and he said, "Chris isn't my nightmare, he's my effing friend, and things are fine. All this transphobia is starting to piss me off." And I thought that said it all. According to the gentleman who emailed me, he thinks that Mr. Beast has an agenda. And it seems to me Mr. Beast has an agenda to say, Chris is my friend, he's always been my friend. Why do you want me to suddenly change that fact because you don't like something about him? I don't know that that's an agenda. I think that's, if someone attacked you, Danielle, I would stand up for you and say, hey, that's my friend. If you don't like my friend and you don't know my friend, then I'm not going to sit here and just, jump on your ship and say, yeah, let's all attack Danielle just because you don't like something about Danielle. Now, if you've done something intentionally to hurt somebody and they're angry at you, that's between you and them. But just for being who you are.
Kick the shit out of me if I ever do that. That's fine. And, I like to think I would never do that sort of thing. And that's where it gets, that's where Mr. Beast is bang on with this. Now, I, like you, don't know Mr. Beast. And yet, there are people who are now so upset because Mr. Beast has a transgender friend that now they're taking to social media to vent their rage because somebody that they can't like anymore because they have a transgender friend and they're refusing to attack them. And I think that's really where a lot of people are going to be upset, is because somebody that they watched, now they feel they can't watch anymore because it's just broken their world a little bit and there's no rationality to it. I'm not making much sense there. That's kind of a bit...
No, I think you're making a lot of sense. I think a lot of the reason is usually some sort of fear-based reaction. Like, if that person isn't who I think they are, then what else don't I know? What truths that I have stuck to and grasped and clinged onto might not also be true? And sometimes I feel like that can trigger people into a reaction.
But here's the thing, and this is an observation, right? And you and I have both done this. We've both said, oh, shit, I was wrong about that. I need to change my thinking and move on with my day. And there's almost as if, when it comes to being binary, there are people who can say, got that wrong. Oh, I'm an idiot. I'll rethink that. And that's how we grow. And then there are people who are not wrong. They will never acknowledge being wrong. And even the thought of them being wrong will trigger them.
I think it does begin with that. I think it does begin with the ability to stand back and question yourself first. Instead of questioning others, question yourself and saying, well, why do I really believe this? Do I have enough information and perspectives from both sides of the conversation that I can actually start formulating a real opinion for myself? I'm hoping that's what we're doing here today, is to let someone who maybe doesn't have a friend who is transgender be able to hear you speak and say, okay, I'm listening to someone who maybe I don't have friends who fall into that category, and I can learn by just a conversation and seeing what that person is like and learning a bit about them and seeing their perspectives. I think it all begins and ends with that, is the ability to stop, put the brakes on and go, wait a minute. Before I lead with hate or I lead with the need to lash out, the need to fight, we need to lead with the ability to sometimes shut our mouths, stop, and absorb and understand. Where do you think we go from here? Is it better to be silent and say nothing and hope the storm blows over, or is it discussions like this in the creator space that allow people to understand that we're creators and human beings are going to be different people?
Funny enough, Steph Sanyati, who's a transgender content creator, or a content creator who also happens to be transgender, she made a comeback post a couple of days ago, and it's in a very similar thing as to, where is this all going? And her view is bang on. Let's just show joy. Let's just show positivity. Let's stop responding with anger. Some transgender people are just as bad as some of the left when it comes to, really nasty comments, which they help nobody. The number of people who are, I think you are wrong, therefore I am outraged and I'm going to post on Twitter until I destroy you. You are cancelled. That sort of hate. You don't look good when you're so angry. The person you're attacking rarely looks good. They just think, oh, yeah, here we go. But, it's going to be hard because at the moment, we do unfortunately have politicians using transgender as a political crutch and treating people as pawns. That will pass. Something else will be, the topic that, like everything, these things do pass. My only concern is they're making laws in America and in the UK, actually. Laws are being passed which are, bringing up the bathroom thing again. And it's like, oh, we've done with this.
I've never paid attention to which bathroom you go into. Do you have a bathroom of choice, or is it the women's bathroom? And I would never even think about it. If you said I'm going to the bathroom, I would assume you would just go to the bathroom that was right for you, and then you would come back afterwards, and I wouldn't even think about it.
I'll go in, I'll close the door, I'll have a pee, I'll wash my hands, and I'll be on my way.
You and I identify, in terms of politically, in an interesting way. I consider myself a centrist, but I'm more liberal-leaning, a little bit left. And you identify as kind of a centrist, but a little more right-leaning, a little more conservative.
Libertarian, centre-libertarian sort of, I'm very hands-off, leave people alone sort of thing.
I live in a state where our motto is, live free or die. So
we agree on far more than we disagree, I think.
And we've disagreed on stuff before. It's not like we agree on everything, you and I. And the one thing I think we've never even thought to agree or disagree on is our friendship or what we think of each other personally. I've been wrong more times than I can count, but I've always felt like, especially when it comes to our friendship, that I was never wrong with that I've always thought you're a wonderful person who I love very much. And
I love you, man. You're one of my best friends.
No amount of tweets, venom, taking down Reddit posts will change the way I feel about you.
That's going to piss some people off, man.
That's all right. I run the risk of making a video like this that I will get people who will not want to watch my content anymore. And I'm okay with that. But in this situation, I had a viewer who specifically asked me to make a video that I think affects content creators, you being one of them, that I'm friends with. And I felt it was something that was worth having a conversation about.
To that person who believes that you can't discuss transgender topics anymore, yes, you can. You absolutely can. And there are discussions to be had about how we treat gender dysphoria. I would respectfully suggest that person is in full awareness of all the facts before they kick off, because that will just trigger angry people, and then have a discussion. And perhaps if you're outraged by something, before you take to social media, ask yourself why you feel outraged and who gets to benefit from that. Because we see this on media all the time. I mean, clickbait is clickbaiting.
A perfect example of that is the tweet I was referring to, right? Here's Sunny V2 made a video that the situation with Mr. Beast and Chris. And guess what? That video's still up on YouTube. So you are allowed to talk about transgender. You are allowed to make commentary. I think they're just asking what you just said, that those conversations remain respectful and that they don't in any way threaten or endanger the person on the other side of the conversation. And I think that that's fair in respect to almost any issue two people might discuss.
That applies to everybody.
Well, Danielle, thank you very much for taking a little time here and speaking with me and helping me bring some clarity to this and respectfully having a conversation. So thank you, pal.
Thank you. Love you, man.
I want to thank all of my viewers for taking the time to sit down and leave comments whether I agree or disagree with what you have to say. I enjoy the conversations. And I especially want to thank my very good friend Danielle Hallett for taking the time to sit down and have an open and honest conversation so that hopefully all of us will have a better understanding of this conversation as a whole. But no matter what your opinion might be on this conversation, be kind to one another and keep creating. I'll talk to you soon. Peace.